All right, welcome back to Ripe Avocados, episode 22. Today we've got another Netflix original, the first Anna Kendrick appearance too on the channel. It's Woman of the Hour, and I guess this also qualifies as another horror movie. So,
Thriller horror.
yeah, it
A
kind
horror
of
for
meshes.
women.
Yeah, oh my god. Don't get me started on that. Well,
Yeah.
we'll dive into everything that needs to be talked about and give it our score.
Daydream, I fell asleep amid the flowers for a couple of hours on a beautiful day. Daydream.
Yeah, so the movie Woman of the Hour, the lead characters are Anna Kendrick, of course, and then Daniel Zavato. And Anna Kendrick plays Cheryl, who is this lady who's trying to become an actress in Hollywood by any means necessary, kind of going through the whole process of auditioning for things, and her agent lets her know of an open spot on the dating game, I believe is what it's called, yes. And it's set in the 70s, and she's basically a contestant on the show. And one of the contestants on the show is Rodney Alcala, who, unbeknownst to everyone, is actually a fucking terrifying serial killer. And basically the whole movie, it kind of follows it. It doesn't follow one timeline. It kind of jumps between different things. Kind of jumps between the dating game as well as Rodney going out and killing these poor women out in the middle of the desert. And as Shade said, this is a horror, but I would classify this more as a thriller because it just kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time, and you don't know when Rodney's switch is going to flip. And this movie does a really good job of just building up suspense, and yeah, it just follows the notorious dating game killer.
This shit was kind of crazy in retrospect because a lot of this, I don't know if you did any research on this post movie to look up the story, but this shit is pretty real. Like
Oh yeah.
the accuracy in the movie is not far off from what actually happened. So, trick,
So I've been big into serial killers, and I hope that doesn't come across creepy.
true crime.
But
Just say that. That's
true
like the
true crime.
that,
But I
that
love
mellows the
shows
line.
like Mindhunter, of course. And then honestly, all the Netflix documentaries that come out on like Ted Bundy, BTK Killer, all those different things. Zodiac is a great movie. But then, of course, we've talked about this before. Our love for thrillers is so great. So anytime there's like a thriller about a serial killer or any sort of murder, we're definitely drawn to that more. So I have heard, and I've literally watched the videos of the actual footage of the dating game with Rodney Alcala on that before this movie even came out. And I was also always kind of fascinated by it, but was surprised there was never, or at least a mainstream movie or show about it that I had seen. So when this movie kind of came out, I was definitely interested in it. So I'm excited to talk about it, or at least talk about the topic of it. But I definitely want to hear your thoughts on characters, at least to start off.
Right. So let's jump into that. I went 6-5 here for characters.
I went 6-9 on characters.
Okay. So we're in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
Honestly, without really getting too far into it, the performance by the actor playing Rodney, you just said his name, David Zucchetta. Is that his name?
Something like that. I had seen it. Zavato.
Zavato.
Daniel
I mean,
Zavato.
he does a great job at making me terrified of him. He's got a couple scenes in here where they just show him getting disrespected. It's kind of a pretty cliche aspect to a serial killer where he acts very normal. He clearly has a sociopath diagnosis or antisocial personality disorder. He acts like this really nice guy in front of everybody, but some people in the movie just pick up that something's really off with him. Like he has this complete envelope directory of, or photography album basically, of his prized killings and whatnot. It's really fucking deranged, and he will just show people this album almost too much, as if he definitely gets off to the idea that he gets so close to getting caught multiple times in the movie, and
oh yeah,
seemingly
it's
throughout
why
his
he
career.
went on the dating game.
Yeah. And the important thing I'll note too is this guy literally went, we talked about, we alluded to how this is real. It's very, very accurate too. And I didn't really know that while I was watching it. They do the little thing at the end where they show what actually happened in real life, and then I just started going on Wikipedia like crazy. This dude literally was a convicted rapist in, I believe, 1971. It was not ever screened before he went on this show, where a piece of the show was you go on a resort vacation with the winner. So it's, if you haven't watched the movie, it's 3 contestants, 3 male contestants, and 1 female contestant who's Anna Kendrick, like we mentioned. She doesn't see what the contestants look like. So it's kind of like Love is Blind, I guess. And she is just asking them really dumb questions, and Buster from Arrested Development is the host of this show. And I like, just to add on to the more of the character aspect, but she's just supposed to act like a ditz and eventually pick one of them.
Yeah.
And this dude is never screened for it, which is nuts at the time. Obviously, it's the 70s, so I would assume that they would do some sort of background check, but seemingly that never happens. And the woman in real life who picked Rodney as the winner, she too denies a date with him, as Anna Kendrick does.
Immediately got a bad vibe.
Yeah, I don't know if she actually went on a date like Anna Kendrick did and noticed a lot of things were really off about him, but nonetheless, he's a chilling character, and it's a very good acting job. The only other thing I've seen this actor in is It Follows. He's actually one of the protagonists in that movie.
Yeah.
So
kinda.
It's
kind of. He's just like a horny, like older neighbor.
Yeah, he's
like,
not a villain though. He's not
no.
this. It's not this for sure.
No.
But the other characters, I don't know if you want to touch on them.
He is in Don't Breathe. Have you seen that movie?
I don't think I have, but I've seen.
That's a really good movie where they like rob this blind guy's house, and this blind guy's pretty much like Rambo.
Oh shit!
But he's like, yeah. So you like are feeling bad for the blind guy at first, but then the story starts unraveling, and I won't spoil it, but it's a really good movie. It's really fun, good. It's with Jane Levy too, who's in what is it? Evil Dead or whatever it is.
Okay. Evil Dead Rises.
I don't know. That's the second one, I think. I don't know if she's in that one, but she's in like the remake of the original one, I think.
I gotcha. So let's talk more about the other characters. I gave it a 6.5 and you 6.9. Honestly, I just thought that a lot of these side characters were pretty pointless, and they didn't. Not pointless isn't the right word. They just didn't really provide much depth. I kind of wish that this movie had not just been a small release on Netflix, because I think the whole idea of this story could have been made more interesting and more. I would have liked to see more detail about about Rodney's upbringing and whatnot, because they didn't really explain all of that. They kind of alluded to him not knowing who his dad was or who his mom was when he's driving out to the valley with Amy, one of his almost victims. Yeah. Which that's another crazy story, because that's exactly how he gets caught in real life. Is this woman basically flips the whole script on him after she's raped and abducted, and tells him that she doesn't want him to tell what happened here, making it seem like she was the one that committed the crime, and it just completely flips on Rodney's face, and he gets all flustered. He just has this gripe of overpowering women and wanting to be the one in charge of the situation, which is again, like a serial killer fantasy that we've seen before, but it's just really fucking creepy because of
it's
how
one of
well he
those
plays it.
it's one of those scenarios where it's like in horror movies or anything like that where I feel like a lot of viewers are like, wait, why doesn't the person in distress just try to play it cool and try to play along? And that's exactly what she does in this scenario, and it works out for her. And it's like,
Yeah.
fuck yeah, like thank God she's able to get away from this absolutely like mental patient.
To be honest, she was probably the one, out of the girl characters of the movie, I kind of liked her the most because she seemed just so blatantly innocent. I mean, she seemed
Oh,
knocking
yeah.
off, she seemed knocking off a laundromat for like 10 quarters in the beginning of the movie because she's a drifter. She doesn't have any money, but she's super young,
Yeah.
and you already have seen Rodney kill someone in the beginning scene of the movie, which is fucking horrifying. We put this thing on, and Fran and I did, and she couldn't watch it after like 2 minutes because she knew what was about to
Yeah.
happen.
Well, I mean, clearly he was like attacking a certain like, or honestly, I don't know what the fuck is going on in the mind of a serial killer, but he definitely was targeting like that drifter vibe. That way, I would assume, so it doesn't like come back to him. He's able to just pick up these women that like aren't close with their family and are just like by themselves. And if they go missing, they go missing. But then he really tries to step it up by I don't know if his intention was to kill Anna Kendrick, but like I would assume so, and that would be the craziest thing in the world because he's literally captured on national TV going on a date with her, and if she ends up missing, like what was his game plan?
Well, I don't know if this is a step up in his fantasy too, but
Yeah,
he
yeah, exactly.
seemingly does kill this male coworker of his at
Oh, yeah.
this newspaper he works for as a photographer because we see his photo in his album later on. And it's mentioned that this guy was real. He's been convicted of killing 8 people, one of which was in 2016 when he was incarcerated for he's dead now, thank God. He was
Yeah.
incarcerated for like 30 years or something, and one of the murders came back to him in 2016, probably with DNA, but I didn't read too much into that. But he's rumored to have killed 130 people, which is ridiculous. Like Jeffrey Dahmer, for not to like throw stats out here, but I think Jeffrey Dahmer was convicted of killing like 30, which is, well, I mean, a serial killer is classified as like 3 people, I think,
Yeah.
but this
But
dude was
to
a
be-
fucking psycho.
To be fair, like the numbers on serial killers is always crazy because like the convicted number versus like the assumed is always drastically different. Like
Yeah.
Jeffrey
and
Dahmer might be being convicted of 30 is insane in itself, but like his suspected number could be who the fuck knows.
Yeah, and someone will probably fact check me on that. I actually don't know the number off the top of my head, but I could be mixing it up with one of these other nut jobs. But
John Wayne
None
Gacy or someone, I don't know.
yeah, nonetheless, I mean, the characters aside from Rodney just didn't really do it for me. I thought Anna Kendrick's role was fine, and they try to show her on this other date previously with just someone she works with, and
Oh, yeah.
she's able to. She ends up sleeping with this guy kind of because she feels bad for him, and
Yeah, 100%.
she's not really.
She just feels
sexually-
awkward in this scenario, so she just like gives in.
Yeah, and this sort of just goes back to my point of if this movie was longer, I think they could have utilized better examples of how Anna Kendrick's character was able to pick Rodney out as a sour apple from the crowd, which she sort of does. Well, she obviously does this later on. She's able to just recognize that some of the shit he's saying is really fucking weird. And one of the other contestants tells her while he's like meeting her after the show that to watch out for this guy. That dude also was real too. That was a real piece of evidence where he said that Rodney said to him like in intermission of the show that he always like gets the girl or whatnot.
Yeah.
And it just goes back to his infatuation with not being told no and also just having this weird power fantasy over women. It's fucking really scary to watch, but it's effective if you're into this kind of genre. You'll appreciate the depth of his character, I would say.
Yeah. No, I definitely think the best part of the movie was the portrayal of Rodney Alcala. Like, it was bone chilling to watch him try to be a normal person versus like you see his like blood boiling. And like when you can tell he's not getting exactly what he wanted, like on his date with Anna Kendrick, when she keeps trying to like be flirty and kind of push back a lot, and she just draws it up to like her not being on dates a lot and her being kind of uncomfortable in those situations, you can tell he's getting more and more frustrated with it, that she's not just like falling into his lap. And it's when she gives him the fake number and she's walking back to her car and he's like, hey, give me, or like, tell me your number, that way I know it's the right one. And she clearly gave him a fake number and he's pissed off by it, and he's like, okay, so I guess I'll just see you around then. And she's like, maybe, and is trying to walk away. And when she turns, he literally mutters like, I'm gonna fucking bash your head in, or some shit like that. And it's just like chilling as fuck, because the whole time he has just like this stone cold stern face, and it's just very eerie the whole time. So
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
just looks like he's gonna pop at any second.
yeah, and I guess that's what we meant by like this movie kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time. But yeah, Daniel definitely did a good job of portraying Rodney. Anna Kendrick's character to me was fine. She was like a quirky girl, and I like the whole character development of her giving into her neighbor Pete Holmes, which was a weird casting choice there, I feel like, but whatever. Good for Pete Holmes. And then her like finally sticking up for herself when it comes to an actual serial killer in front of her. But yeah, I don't know. The broken. We'll talk about this more in writing, actually. But
I think we can probably move on to cinematography unless you have anything else to add. So I gave the.
else.
Okay, yeah, I went 5.0 for cinematography.
I went 6.5.
Okay, and it just was pretty basic to me. There was a couple cool shots. They tried to do a little with the camera work. There was a mirror scene of Amy when she just gets back into the car, where they kind of copied Oz Perkins in Longlegs when he shows the woman in the car and in like the climax scene of that movie. But it's been done a billion times.
Yeah.
And the scene where she's walking to her car, it's pretty creepy, but it's nothing from a cinema point of view that I haven't seen before. Like, the music really didn't stand out. I honestly think they could have made more of a concerted effort to utilize the photography, because they were driving out to like the San Fernandino Valley, or in the movie they were, and taking these like this is just how he lured girls out there to pretend like they were models and pretend like he was a model photographer and take these pictures. So maybe they could have leaned into that aspect more, but this goes back to me not wanting this to just be a Netflix release, because I don't think that they really spent time with the whole cinematography aspect. That's why I'm right here in the middle of the road.
Yeah, I thought the cinematography was fine. Like you were mentioning, nothing crazy nothing was standing out to me as like, oh, this is incredible. I will say the one standout was the final scene where Rodney has the cops called on him and he's being arrested, and you just kind of see him like flailing around on the ground, like panicking, screaming for help. And like the shots they're taking are exactly like the same kind of shots that would be happening if Rodney was assaulting a woman. Mm-hmm. But like you're seeing Rodney being the one that's like being thrown to the ground, put in handcuffs, hands tied up, like his legs kicking around. And it was just like a nice like fuck you, like fuck that guy. I'm glad he's getting the justice he deserves. Honestly, he probably should be put like 6 feet below the jail, but whatever.
Yeah, it should have been like drawn and quartered, honestly.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been enough.
Just a bunch of women just beating the shit out of him to death would be great. Probably can't like put that on TikTok, but whatever.
Like the blink twice ending. That would have been
for
satisfying.
real. Honestly.
But there really isn't a whole lot here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
besides that, I also thought the like cinematography on like the dating game show was pretty cool. The whole set and like kind of took you back to that like 70s style like janky ass production. But outside of that, it was pretty run of the mill.
A lot of flashbacks too, which I wrote down, and to be honest, I think they could have ordered them a little differently. I think that there's just a whole other directorial aspect you could have probably taken with this movie, but that's probably more so with the writing piece of that, if you're good to go on to there.
Yeah.
All right, so I gave writing a 6-1.
I gave writing. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
Yeah, I gave writing a 6-8. So we're
Yeah.
really in the same ballpark here.
A lot, like, not a ton of originality, but it's a true story or based on a true story, quote unquote. So they did the story itself is just fucking crazy. That's why it's above a 6. I mean, that's to me that's an above average score. I really think that this movie could have been a lot better had they not revealed his identity right away. Like you see Rodney in the first scene of the movie and you see him kill someone right away. And I get why they probably did this is to just shine light on how ridiculous it was that this man was not incarcerated for however many years while he was committing these crimes. But like this is just a movie review podcast, so from this point of view, I think the movie itself wasn't as good because we knew who he was, and yeah, it made the scenes terrifying when you see him show up and just start snapping pictures of somebody. You knew that he's gonna fucking kill somebody or try to. And, I mean, he killed everybody until the last scene when you see Amy get away, or Anna Kendrick too, I guess. But maybe it was just me, but I think that it could have been a lot cooler had maybe we had just seen the point of view of the victim, in particular this opening scene, because there's a lot of shots too of just on her, like kind of from Rodney's point of view, which goes back to cinematography. But I just thought that took a lot out of what could have been a better movie.
I definitely hear what you're saying, but I think your counterpoint to yourself was exactly what they were going for. It's like, we can't believe this guy has gotten away with this so many times, and the audacity of him to go on national television when we know he's a serial killer is the point that is trying to be made about Rodney Alcala. Like, how sociopathic is he that he is putting himself out on national television when he has so many people that he's murdered in the past. And I think it also, at least for a recent memory, kind of reminded me of Trap, where you figure out that Josh Hartnett is the serial killer within the first 15 minutes of the movie. The rest of the movie is you watching this character just devolve in front of your eyes, like trying to be a normal person in certain scenarios, but you see behind the mask and what they're truly like when they're about to like kill someone, or they get those urges to kill someone. And I feel like this movie did a really great job of that. I would say though, the writing, it was an hour and 30 minutes, and I don't mind a short movie. I usually prefer it, but it seemed like the choppy timelines kind of fucked with the pacing of the movie a little bit. The constant back and forth between him going out to the desert to snap photos versus like him on the beach with, I get that random girl, I can't remember her name, but she like noticed him as contestant number 3, and she was like, holy fuck, that's the guy that murdered my friend. I thought that whole story arc might have a little bit more substance to it, but it was literally just kind of interjected into the story.
Yeah,
and then,
I agree.
And then that was it. It also, like, Anna Kendrick's, like, the biggest name in the movie. Even her storyline was a little jumbled up within the whole thing. And, like, at the end, you're like, wait, was Anna Kendrick the protagonist? Who was the protagonist? Was this girl, Amy, the protagonist? It's like,
I think it's just all women are the protagonists in the movie.
Yeah,
maybe.
Definitely. But it's still kind of like messed with the flow of the movie for me personally. But I mean, at the end of the day, I was just happy to see that man get caught. So
It definitely messed with the pacing. Also, there's just so many time jumps, and they're all in the 70s. It was very hard to just keep track of what came before another thing.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I was so confused at where Amy's timeline was in retrospect to Anna Kendrick's and all of those, because that's ultimately when he gets caught. But we see sporadic scenes of Amy with Rodney driving out to the desert when he first meets her, and that the first time we see her is very early on in the movie, and I did not even recall the date come the climax of the movie. So the
Yeah.
movie kind of ended, and I was like, "Oh shit, that was the last time he ever saw somebody."
yeah,
But I think it just sort of messed with it. Honestly, like I said in the beginning, it should have just been a little longer, and I think it would have been a lot easier to figure out. Honestly, too, they should not have told it out of order if this is the direction they were going for. I don't really think the out of linear time structure worked here, in my opinion. And I like that kind of structure, but in order for that to work, I think you have to make it more of a whodunit, because then it's just so like A to Z. Very,
Yeah.
very boring, very bland.
yeah. Because then the out of linear time structure just starts further building upon the point that they made within the first 10 minutes. It's like at a
Yeah.
certain point you're like, okay, we get it. This man is a serial killer. He's fucking
Right, like,
horrible.
Why
But,
did
like,
we need the scene of the girl in New York getting killed? I didn't really get that. Was that just to show that one part when Anna Kendrick says, "Oh, I went to school at Columbia," and he was like, "Oh yeah, I went to NYU." I think that was the only reason they kept that part in the movie.
Yeah, maybe.
I just didn't think it was completely necessary. But again, if it was maybe a 2.5 hour movie, you would have more time, because I get it. You want to show how evil he is and build up that suspense.
Yeah.
But I think like 2 to 3 scenes of that, maybe in the first 30 to 45 minutes of the movie, work. And then the main part of the movie, you just focus on Anna Kendrick's character going on the dating show and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that whole part, I feel like Anna Kendrick was only on screen for maybe 30 minutes of the movie. And
It made it feel like that. If she was on for more, it didn't seem that way.
yeah, and I get all the themes too. They're making it seem as though every man, for the most part, is just the biggest piece of shit in the world, except for
I mean, they kind of were.
no, they were, but I think that point was a little bit overly hammered home. Aside from the one boyfriend of the woman who recognized him, where he was just
Yeah.
sort of, he didn't really completely believe her at first, but he did not believe her. He just was basically trying to confirm if
Yeah.
this was the guy or not. And then he ends up having this reconciliatory moment with her. But I don't know. Maybe another thing that this could have added was two detectives, because I think detectives in these kind of movies, just having those characters in there as a steady piece of consistency. Maybe that doesn't make sense, but detectives always provide that comfort zone for me in these kind of movies where it's really fucked up shit going on, but you're like, okay, the detectives are here. We know that they're good. We know that they're trying to get to the bottom of this. Well, you can also kind of track the progress of things. I'm sort of just thinking of True Detective, where they use this whole non-linear time lapse. And this is not trying to be some diluted story that's very, has all these moving pieces to it. I just think the time jumps and a lot of these flashback scenes made it very confusing. So
I kind of get why they didn't do the whole detective thing though, because like we were talking about earlier, it just makes sense to the story that this man has like been murdering people for who knows how long and has he just kept getting away with it. And like they do have that one scene where he is being questioned when he's at like the LA Times or whatever it is, showing everyone pictures of people he's probably murdered. And the two detectives like come to question him, but then by the end of it, they're just literally standing there laughing with him.
yeah.
So I feel like it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, detectives have been around. They've questioned the guy because he literally fits the profile of this killer, but he's just been able to kind of like smooth talk his way out of things. And that's been his only That's been his only like tool throughout his life. He thinks smooth talking women is how he'll get through life and be able to keep killing people, but in the end, like, it doesn't work out with Anna Kendrick, and it doesn't work out with Amy at the end.
Yeah, his fantasy just becomes way too much to obtain, and you see this a lot with true crime. Like, these guys just get the biggest. They already have like the biggest egos in the world, and thankfully it doesn't work out. But moving on to entertainment, I give this a 5.5 out of 10.
That's pretty solid. I gave it a 6.5.
And it's not a bad movie by any sense. It's not. You can definitely watch this and get something out of it. I don't think it's a bad watch. It's not poorly made in any aspect. It's just not amazing. I think it would have been better on a bigger screen, like with a movie release, and it does not make you feel good at all. It's
No.
It's very dark. I get more unsettled watching something like this than I do It Chapter 2 or some fictional horror movie, because
Damn. This shit actually happened.
it actually happened, and it just makes you feel really poorly about people in general, that
Yeah.
this was able to go on. Not even, like 50 years ago. Less than 50 years ago, this all went down pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's not a horrible movie by any means. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to somebody. I have other things on the top of my watch list that I would definitely throw out before this one. But if someone was like, hey, have you seen Woman of the Hour? I'd be like, yeah, it was okay. Like,
Yep.
It wasn't anything crazy. You know what I mean?
That's literally the ballpark I'm in. I gave it a 6.5, and I feel like that's a fair score because it's better than average for me, but I'm not going to go out of my way to recommend this to anyone. I wouldn't be like, hey, you know what movie you have to see? Woman of the Hour. If someone, like you said, if someone asked me, like, oh, have you seen Woman of the Hour? I'd be like, oh, yeah, that was a pretty cool movie. Like, a cool topic, like, true to life, true crime, which, again, I fuck with those kind of shows and movies. But also, it's an hour, 30 minutes, so it's not like it's going to waste a bunch of your time. But like I said, it was just all right. Like, it wasn't an outstanding movie or anything. And it doesn't... The part that kind of sucks for this is it doesn't really, like, Hollywood ties the movie at all, which is a good and bad thing, right? Like, it doesn't make the movie so crazy to where it's like, oh, you have to go see this movie. Like, this movie goes insane. Kind of like what Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does for the whole, like, Charles Manson family murders. They build a whole story around that one true crime, and it makes the movie so grand that, like, you have to go see it to watch all these different things unfold for the giant climax at the end. Where, of course, they switch up what happens, but whatever. This movie, it kind of sticks right to what happened in real life. They might add some scenes here and there, but it's pretty much straightforward with what Rodney Alcala was like and what it was like with him being on that dating game show. But other than that, it's like, okay, that's pretty much it. Like, if you want to know the story of what happened with Rodney Alcala on the dating game show, here's it. Here's a little bit of, like, background on him and, like, his trials as a serial killer, and that's the movie for you.
That's pretty much it. Honestly, I think it would be more beneficial if you're into this kind of stuff to just listen to a true crime podcast about Rodney Alcala versus watching this, because
you can find a 10-minute video on YouTube on this, I guarantee.
Yeah, it's just not a feel-good movie, and a lot of girls or women are not gonna fuck with this shit at all because of how many it has that scene of, you know, the woman of Anna Kendrick going to her car at night, her fuddling her keys, and
you see him
after her.
Yeah. It's like she's walking by. That was kind of a cool shot, actually. Her walking, and then the camera's slowing down as she's speeding up to see Rodney in the background, like picking up his pace and following her to her car. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was freaky, but we just saw Salem's Lot a couple weeks ago, and that one scene of Euron Greyjoy following those two kids was an excellent cinematography shot. I think that And that was just like another small release film. I think that was way more effective to me, but I don't know. This movie is just fine. Like a couple fine scores here.
Yeah. This movie's also a bit more realistic than Salem's Lot, but
right. It's just it's so realistic. That's why I kind of stand by. Just go listen to a podcast about it if you don't want to watch a bunch of really fucked up shit that actually happened. So that concludes this episode of Rap Avocados number 22. We got a final score here of a 6.2 out of 10. So right in the average ballpark. And all of our scores can be found on our website, which will be linked in our bio. And until next time, next Tuesday, stay tuned for that, and peace out.
Deuces.
I dream of the places I've been with you, how we sang.